Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thanks to all the folks who joined on Zoom and LinkedIn for the final session of the Unbox Summit 2022 presented by Amdocs India Innovation Team. I'm Akshay Jalal, working as innovation expert in Amdocs Corporate Cross India Programs team, also a design thinking practitioner and facilitator. Will be your host for today's session. Recently, I came across an interesting article on Forbes website written by Mimi Lechonich from Forbes Council member. She mentioned, too often the term entrepreneur is given a rigid definition. Someone who creates a new business taking on greater than normal risk to do so. To her, this interpretation is not right. She quoted, an entrepreneur doesn't have to be the person whose name appears in the articles of incorporation or someone in the C-suite. An entrepreneur is anyone who embodies the entrepreneurial mindset, and these individuals can and should flourish throughout an organization, regardless of their title. Now, in a startup setting or a small company, this probably seems very natural. Small teams trying to achieve big breakthroughs are usually comprised of people across roles and positions who will change the status quo and take risks. Now, after reading this article for a few minutes, I had these questions running in my mind. Is there really a place for the entrepreneurial mindset in defined hierarchical structures and large organizations? Can we nurture it? I hope you may also be having a similar kind of questions, but not to worry. To get the answers, we all have gathered here for today's exclusive panel discussion. Stay tuned for the next 40 to 45 minutes, wherein our amazing panel are going to share interesting viewpoints on this important topic. Now, I take this opportunity to invite our panel moderators and the speakers in this amazing panel. To start off, I'd like to invite Mr. Rahul Kulkarni. Can I see Rahul in the spotlight? Hi, Rahul. Good morning.
Akshay, very good morning to you.
Rahul Kulkarni is a co-founder and partner at DoNew. He's a seasoned product innovator and mentor, having built teams, products, and businesses over 20 years across large organizations and startups. Rahul also serves as Chief Technologist at Samagra and previously served as Chief Product Officer at Socrates. He has contributions in building open source population scale software to run education, skilling, service delivery, health, and agriculture infrastructure across state governments. Before entering the startup world, Rahul spent 6 years at Google, starting out as Google's first product manager in India in 2006, helping build several of Google's key products and businesses like Google Finance, Orkut, Open Social, Google Apps Platform, Google Cloud Platform, and the most used application, Google India Maps. Prior to Google, he was product manager for LabVIEW at NIC Austin, Texas, and worked with customers like NASA and CERN. Rahul holds 9 patents, a TEDx speaker, serves on various expert technical committees, Masters in Engineering from Georgia Tech, and Bachelors of Engineering from VGTI, Mumbai. We welcome you to this amazing panel discussion.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you. Now I'd like to invite our speakers to start off. Sonal Sharda from Amdocs. Can I see Sonal in spotlight? Welcome, Sonal.
Thank you.
Sonal is Thank you for joining. Sonal is a seasoned leadership and OD professional with over 2 decades of diverse experience spanning the Indian Army and the corporate world. Sonal served for a decade in the Indian Army along our vast borders and was part of multiple operations. Over the next decade, she ran a startup and has continued working in the domain of people, capability, change, and culture. In her current role at Amdocs, Sonal leads the talent management for executive leadership. Welcome once again.
Thank you, Akshay.
Now I'd like to invite Mr. Ravi Arora from Tata Sons. Welcome, Ravi.
Thank you.
Ravi Arora is Vice President Group Innovation at Tata Sons. He works with Tata companies to enhance the effectiveness of their innovation programs. He has conceptualized Tata group level programs like Tata Innovista, Innoverse, Tata Ideas, Innovator, and challenges which are worth solving. He facilitates Tata companies in experimenting, embedding, and maturing these programs. He started his career as a maintenance engineer. Later, he initiated and led the knowledge management program at Tata Steel, which was recognized as a best practice company by APQC USA, and also won the MAKE, the Most Admired Knowledge Enterprise Award. He's actively engaged with business schools like NSEED, SMU for joint research projects related to behavior science. And he's also the author of 2 books, Making Innovations Happen, published in 2015, and Igniting Innovation, the Tata Way, published in 2019. Ravi earned his B from IIT Roorkee and PGPX from XLRI. Welcome once again, Mr. Ravi.
Thank you very much, Akshay. Thank you. A pleasure.
Thank you. And now I'd like to invite a final speaker from the panel, Mr. Shreenivas Chetlapalli. He's a function head innovation at Tech Mahindra. He has 20 plus years of work experience across innovation, strategy, and sales. He's a member of global leadership from Tech Mahindra and leadership team of Makers Lab, Tech Mahindra R&D Center. He's responsible for ideation, entrepreneurship, and collaboration. His areas of work are around AI, AR, VR, IoT, and quantum computing. And his areas of contribution are mentoring startups, innovation governance, co-innovation, and open innovation. He's also associated with NASSCOM panel for shortlisting top 50 startups, his board of studies and industry advisor board of prestigious universities. I take this opportunity to welcome once again all the panel members and the audience for joining this exclusive panel discussion. I request audience to keep using the Q&A window in the Zoom application to keep sharing your questions, and people who have joined on LinkedIn to share their comments as well. Thank you once again. Now I hand over the days to Rahul Kulkarni.
Thank you very much, Akshay, and thank you so much, everyone, for having us all here. It's truly an illustrious panel. I'm truly humbled to have Srini, Sonal, and Ravi here part of the panel. It's amazing to see Srini's deep tech experience. You know, we're going to really enjoy Srini's deep tech perspective. You know, he set up a quantum computing lab in a IT services company. It's a great blend of what is latest in tech, me into a large scale cutting edge firm. Sonal, with the experience in the Indian Army, just brings such a wonderful people perspective. You've really seen the people angle in the Army, in a startup, and at Amdocs. So would love to hear your thoughts, Sonal, more on that front coming up. And Ravi, you've really lived through, actually grown the whole innovation mantle at Tata. And, you know, there is a whole unique angle to the way Tata does things. You know, Tata does not often just build innovation for the sake of innovation from a company perspective or a team perspective. It's for nation building. And so it's really amazing and really eager to hear from you thoughts about what does it mean to drive innovation at that scale with the nation in perspective, with the diversity of products ranging from brick and mortar to IT. Is there a formula to it? So why don't we get started? I think it's going to be a fantastic panel. I'm going to learn a lot, and I hope the audience enjoys this too. So the first question that always comes to mind is, business always runs as usual. What prompts or triggers a business to demand entrepreneurship and innovation? Maybe Ravi, if you can share perspective, you know, what were external factors maybe that kind of lead to this? What prompted innovation, entrepreneurship at Tata's when you started? Ravi?
Yeah, thank you, Rahul. Interesting question, and my take on this is very simple. In the world of yesterday and the world of today, everybody is striving for differentiation, and I think the word innovation must have been coined much later. I really don't know that. But I think the world or the corporates or the companies, be it an individual, be it you or be it your family members, they all want to be differentiated when they are in the crowd. And the differentiation comes through creativity converted into something action, which is innovation in some sense. So anybody, be it a marketeer, be it a product manager, be it an internal IT team, or be it in HR, everybody is striving to be differentiated within and at the external world. So I don't think when we say what demands or what triggers, I think because there is so much of innovation happening, or the differentiation, the strive for innovation happening, that it is the demand has become explicit. Earlier it was implicit. Earlier, so differentiation was always in the DNA of human beings. That is what I guess human beings are differentiated from other animals. But only thing is, now management has understood that it is only the differentiation which will help. So instead of saying that, guys, please go ahead and differentiate your HR practices and go ahead and differentiate your supply chain practices, they say, no, guys, go ahead, we want innovation. Short answer, keep it short in case there is a follow-up.
Wonderful. This is, world of wonderful quotes there. I think differentiation is in the DNA, but it used to be implicit, now going explicit. Wonderful words there. Thanks, Ravi. Srini, in your side of the business, right, what prompts a tech manager to really think of AR, quantum computing, and so on, right? Typically, if you think of a services, a tech services firm, are there orders coming up that really prompt to get into quantum computing, or is there understanding that this will be needed in the future? When do you start entrepreneurship? When do you start innovation in the organization? What's your perspective? Would love to hear.
I think, thanks, Rahul. See, one of the most important thing in an IT services company, and you see that there's big competition in this sector. It's a $200-300 billion market, and we have very good players who've been entrenched for a long time. So to get sustainable competitive advantage, innovation plays an important role. And second is the pie, by and large, is the same. So you're vying for the same pie, same set of customers, same set of problem statements that we're trying to solve. So how do you position yourself, the thought leadership positioning, or the way analysts look at you? So if I need to go to a customer, I need to say Gartner positions me in this group, or ABC or Forrester thinks that we are leader in this group. So that thought leadership or the first movers advantage plays an important role. Third thing that we've also seen is that innovative products, and I'm coming to the brass tacks, also deliver better EBIT margins, which is also one of the key fights within the services industry. So the products that you build with innovation, with the first mover advantage, will give you a position with the customer. You'll be able to make better revenues at the right EBIT. In terms of coming back to the question on quantum computing, why do we think it's an important thing? If you see the way at which the computing speed has increased, and people say that Moore's law will now go out because his idea that the number of transistors will double every 18 months has actually come to the law of diminishing returns. So there has to be a new way in which computing will happen. And if you look at some of the key examples, for example, quantum cryptography, and I'll just take a minute, where if you have a normal RSA algorithm, people say that for a normal computer, it takes about 4 quadrillion years to break it. But a quantum computer will break it in 100 seconds. So there are multiple applications, right from quantum cryptography to molecular modeling to a very simple thing that we see in our daily life, which is routing mechanism. Okay, so there are multiple applications, and we think that there is a market for that, and we see it happening. That's the reason why the focus on quantum computing.
No, wonderful, wonderful words. Thanks, Srini. So that first mover advantage, better EBIT models with this, and of course, better capabilities from better functionality that can be offered. Very, very beautifully summarize the reasons for it. Now bringing a very different perspective, Sonal, you've seen innovation and entrepreneurship happening, behind enemy front lines. You have seen it happening at a startup. You've seen it happening at a product company like Amdocs. Could you compare and contrast the three? Is it different? What are triggers? Maybe if you can help us understand in these three different areas, what have been the triggers that you have seen? Any commonality, any diversity there?
Wow, Rahul, you caught me with that question. So firstly, very happy to be here. I think, this is really great company to be on the panel here with you, Rahul, Ravi, and Srini. So now to compare, my three loves of my life, the army, my startup, and Amdocs. I think in the army, innovation keeps happening. And there, it's like the purpose is very primal. You're very, very aligned. You know what you need to do. There's not much ambiguity as far as the purpose goes. And, it comes down to basic. It comes down to your life or not, the enemy life or not. So I think innovation there is very, very intrinsic, very aligned with your purpose. So you don't really need too much of an external trigger. It exists around you all the time. So you innovate in multiple ways. You innovate in the way the products you use, the way you use them, the way you operate, the areas you operate, etc. I think in the startup, again, it's innovate or die, right? Because depending on which domain you are in, which sphere you're in, how early have you moved in. So in startup too, I think it was really innovate or die, because you're putting in your money, your people, your effort, and if you don't find either a really innovative product or an innovative way to do things, you perish. You perish like so many others who do. I think in Amdocs, Amdocs has really found a very sweet spot with their approach to innovation. We are a product company, so we do understand the importance, the criticality of innovation. But we're not just looking at it with, innovating a certain product. We're also bringing innovation to our day-to-day. Innovation in the way we approach things. Innovation and sustained innovation. So in Amdocs, we want to bring innovation in the way we think. And we've kind of looked at innovation as one of the power skills that's needed for tomorrow. So we've created platforms where everyone, right from an employee who joins us today or who's about to join us tomorrow, can join in on our platforms, experiment with thoughts, with innovative processes. And similarly, we've created a platform called Switch for leaders. Really, you step in and they help you understand how can you innovate, and how can you create an ecosystem that enables others to innovate. So in all three, I think purpose was very much aligned. And I think, the best part, the sweet spot is when someone doesn't need to nudge you for innovation. You need to innovate.
Wonderful word, Sonal. I think, no, that's wonderful. The whole purpose being common across three, and also I noticed a common theme across the three perspectives you shared. It was innovate or die. Literally a life and death scenario when it's the army or a startup. And then it's innovate to live for tomorrow when it comes to a large scale organization. So a very interesting metaphor perspective there. No, thank you very much. Now, in terms of, Srini, maybe would start with you for this one, which is companies often, or there is this perspective, right, that this person is innovative, this person is truly an entrepreneur, while this person is not. How true is that? Like how deep dependent on the DNA of an individual, of a company are we for driving innovation? Do you think innovation is just in the DNA and it's there or not there? Or do you think innovation can be groomed and people can be groomed into innovation? Companies can be groomed into being innovative. Would be great to hear your perspective, Srini.
I think it's a very important question. I wouldn't have the best answer to it, but I think from my perspective of leading ideation and entrepreneurship, I think we can create a culture of innovation, and we can move companies on the innovation index. We can move individuals on the innovation index. It wouldn't be right to rightfully or wrongfully stereotype somebody as innovative or not innovative. There could be, and as I know, we've all discussed threadbare on innovation and invention, and how innovation is improvement in processes, business models, multiple things that we can do to invention, where we are actually taking an idea and creating a product out of it. So I think from our experience of looking at about 15,000 ideas from different people across the company, we found out that people from as different sectors as HR to BPO, BPS, which we call as business process services and business process operations, to people within project management operations, have actually come up with good ideas that have been implemented, taken to customer. So I don't think we could classify people as innovative or not innovative. But then your next most important thing is that how do we make them innovative, or how do we increase their innovation quotient? By giving them more opportunities, by recognizing them. I'll stop it here because I know we'll have more questions on that. But on the second point of it is that companies definitely will evolve on the innovation index. And as far as services companies are there, we've seen that across the country, we've seen that all services companies within India have moved on the innovation index up above. We've seen the number of patents being filed, the number of white papers written in international journals increase. So definitely, I think there is a scope for moving. It has to be a part of the DNA, but it can be created, cultured, and taken to the next level.
No, thanks, Srini. It's refreshing for that perspective. Yeah, Sonal.
Rahul, if I may, I wanted to just interject here because I really couldn't stop myself. One of the reasons I really am in love with the practice of leadership and the practice of innovation is because I think it's a very, very egalitarian space. Okay, one, all you need is a growth mindset. Really, all you need is really want to know that what you want to do. Every person has the ability to contribute. Every person has the ability to think anew. Like leadership is a practice of choices. I think innovation is also a practice of choices, a practice of reflection. So, just to cut the answer short, is that every person can be innovative and every organization can be innovative.
Any example you can think of, Sonal, in your times, whether in the army or at a startup or at Amdocs, where you would see somebody not expected to be entrepreneurial kind of, wowed you in terms of actually being able to deliver that or come up with something new and add value?
So Rahul, what I'll do is I'll give you a recent example. In Amdocs, sure. we launched an initiative called Shapers, where we basically told that anyone who has any idea that you really think is different. We didn't even talk in terms of dollar returns, nothing. If you really have an idea that you think is innovative, irrespective of, which domain you're from, which unit you're from, what's your, if you're a fresher or you're a veteran or whichever. And Rahul, we kind of, made an attempt to give them the ecosystem to really just come, think about their idea, give them the right ecosystem, throw them open to all sorts of people, all sorts of processes that's available. Whatever they asked for, we kind of made it happen. And you'd be surprised by the ideas that came in. So because of IP reasons, I can't, mention them here. But sure. I think from the organization, we took away 10 ideas that we implemented in the coming year.
Wonderful.
So,
wonderful. Wonderful.
If you really throw it open and you remove all the disablers, you kind of remove the boundaries, people will surprise you. And we had people at the opposite ends of the spectrum. We had people who were veterans, and once you really think that if you're settled in, you tend to become a little stuck, or you tend to become cynical. But we have people who'd been in the system for ages, and we have newbies coming in with fresh ideas, fresh thoughts. So
I think that's the spirit of innovation. Thanks for that, Sonal. Ravi, would love to hear your perspective, just abstracting this a little bit, right? Having entrepreneurship, germinate within and start up within the company and go through the process. Like Sonal mentioned, right? We got ideas, then we implemented them through the year. It still takes a year to get all of that done. With that vantage point that you have, Tata group of companies, there's so many companies in the Tata group. Would you think it's easier or advisable to acquire companies that have already innovated? So there is a proof point. There's already some, value that's generated, and now you're just going to use that value. Or do you think it is important to actually germinate innovation within, so it kind of builds up a culture. And the perspective that I'm asking this is from, large scale companies, especially in the US, a large number of them have started moving from the time trusted, let's invest R&D within the company, let's allocate budget within the company. You've seen the demise of amazing organizations like Xerox PARC and others, where these used to be the place where the computer was invented, where the mouse was invented, where the interface was invented. And these companies are not thriving as much as they would earlier. Today, it's easier to throw $1 million or $10 million to 10 startups, and hopefully one of them wins. So largely, you've seen large companies invest in these innovation funds, and you just outsource the problem of innovation. So from a large-scale company perspective, would love to hear your thoughts. How do you think about it? What do you think is the right thing to do here?
Yeah, complex question. Thanks, Rahul, for that. And the way I see it is that, we know Cisco is known for growing through acquisitions. So just an example.
Yeah.
They're absolutely experts in integration and sort of acquiring companies. But my view on this is that if you look at this as your sole strategy, I don't think it works. The only thing is the fact that the companies are acquiring other companies is a simple acceptance of one fact. And that fact is that unlike the yesterday, which means a few decades ago, where the technology evolution was quite linear, now the technology evaluation is quite exponential. And not everybody can work on every technology. And therefore, the sheer fact that you're accepting that we cannot do everything of our own, and let everybody try and try different things, different technologies, different markets, different products, different services, and so on and so forth. And 99 will die and 1 will survive. And then comes the acquisition mindset. The reason, and the second reason is that the way companies work and the way the startups work, perhaps the KPI is quite different. One works, I'm sure Amdocs perhaps won't approve an idea if they see that after 3 years or 2 years or 5 years, there is a profit in place. So the profit is a key KPI, or a revenue plus profit is a key KPI for companies which are there today, be it any Tata company. But for startups, it is a different KPI altogether. So, and we all know what we are talking about. So the point that I'm making is, while startups go from Series A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and they don't have any plans upfront as to how many alphabets they will cover. But in corporates, we want to see all Series A, B, C, D, F, G, H upfront before saying that I'm going to spend $100 or $1,000 or $10,000.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, as I said, we need to grow our own garden and also be absolutely ready, be watchful of what gardens are being grown outside. And agility is very important. So therefore, one needs to be agile to see what is the right acquisition target and what are the KPIs and stuff like that. I would like to add one more point. I know I've taken my 2 minutes, but still, just add one more. Is that on your previous question of innovator, the way we define innovator is when you look at any startup, who do you think are the two sets of people who are so when you say that a new startup has come up, not many people will know the startup founder unless it becomes a unicorn or about to be a unicorn. What people know is that this startup is in the who's invested in it. Is it SoftBank? It is Sequoia? It is Tiger, and so on. So startups are known by the people who are nurturing or investing. I think we need to transform the same language in corporates. So Amdocs must be having a few thousand people, and it's very difficult to name those few thousand people as innovator. But there will be few top managers. Like those are like Sequoia, Tiger, and SoftBank and others. So I think they need to be the investors in people. And once we crack this equation in our own garden, which is the innovators, a few thousand innovators and a few investors, and I call senior people as nothing but VCs. Unless we put this equation right, I think we will not be able to grow our own garden. Is what my learning is.
No, wonderful perspective. Thanks, Ravi. That's very refreshing. And now, in terms of outputs of innovation, what do we consider good outputs? Like from a large company perspective, you're thinking, oh, it's not affected my earnings next quarter. And so what, right? What is the ROI there? And then at some places, it's a measure of patents being filed. And you say, okay, great, we got 3 patents, we got 15 patents. But most companies are not in the business of enforcing patents. So unless those patents really bake into products, it's not very useful. It's, just good to have. It's a branding, marketing thing, not exactly a business, value driver. Then there is the aspect of, hey, it aids in retention. So you say, oh, by participating in innovation, people feel motivated. People are participating in intellectual activities, so they go further. Which out of these, a company really values from an ROI perspective? Maybe Srini, if you can give your quick take on it, what does it mean for your company to say this is the ROI on it, and here is how you justify innovation within the company?
So I think you have a very important question, because that is what we all go through every day, day in, day out, as to why this idea and why not some other idea. So I think the most important thing that any company does, and which includes Tech Mahindra, is there is a focus on today, and there's a focus on tomorrow. So something which McKinsey calls as microscopic bets and telescopic bets. So today, for me, a metaverse could be a microscopic bet, because I'm sure that I'm going to invest so much and generate revenue in FY23. So is saal mein I put money, and this year I get money out of it. But for a quantum computing could be a telescopic bet for me, because a year and a half I'll keep pumping on it. I'll try to create an ecosystem of universities, startups, my own skill sets of PhD in physics fellows and all. And then I'll probably have numbers from FY25. So there is a delicate bet that if I'm going to invest, say, $100 into innovation in this year, I would probably put $60 in what I'm going to generate in the same FY or the next FY, and about $40 into the innovation or revenues that we'll generate 2 FYs later. So there'll be a breakup of that. And in terms of each idea that we look also, is that idea helping in saving cost for the customer, or is it helping generate revenue for TechM or for the customer's customer? So there are multiple parameters on which we try to measure the idea, and what is the time we take, because there's an idea life cycle from generation of idea to actually creating a POC and getting an alpha innovator and taking it to customer. So how much time do I spend? It's not only money, but from the time the idea is there till the time the idea reaches the end user, how much time are we going to spend? So I think those are 2 measures on how much investment we're going to do, how much we're going to get out of it, what is the time we are looking at, because at the end of the day, it will all boil back to the same competitive advantage. Will that idea give us a competitive advantage? Will that focus on technology bet give this company the competitive advantage? In terms of one last point on the resources, that definitely getting recognized typically in a services company as an innovator is a big thing. Because in most of the services company, you are trying to acquire skills that are required for better delivery. But if you are having an idea that gets implemented, that gets approved for a patent or for a white paper, it is a big name for him. And at Tech Mahindra, we've ensured that all those people are rewarded, given those precedents in appraisal and all. And the last point is, it also helps build that CV of the person. Because if you go at a technical architect level or at a technical senior technical person to a new company, they ask us, how much automation have you done? How much differentiation have you brought to the customer within the scope of deliverables you agreed with the customer? So I think the parameters of hiring, the parameters of building our skill has changed. So innovation is now part of it.
Good to know. Good to know. And that's, I think you covered a variety of things in terms of what should a company guide themselves on innovation and entrepreneurship, and the whole aspect of a microscopic bet, a telescopic bet. I think that perspective is very important, because most of the time everyone is in their micro quarterly earnings based, hamster race. So thanks for that, Srini. Now, we have all talked about, questions relating to from a company and org level. Let's go into the mindset of a team manager. So there may be a whole bunch of managers listening to this. and wondering, what does it mean for me? These are all company strategies, all of this is great, but what does it mean for me as a team? And Sonal, maybe you can get your thoughts on this, since you are so familiar with people across the company. One of the challenges that comes through when it comes to innovation, entrepreneurship, is we all celebrate the one thing that's great. If you take my resume, I have 10 good looking bullets in my resume, but I really have 100 failures that I've not put on LinkedIn. Right now, those 100 failures are really make me who I am. That is what has helped me learn to get the 10 or 5 good things that actually appear. So what it means is, you have to be an environment that is okay with failure. You build a tolerance for failure. You build a tolerance for ambiguity. And in today's world, where everything needs to be a spreadsheet, and you need your time plan and your work stream plan down to the last minute, how do you allow for ambiguity to creep in? How do you allow for fear of failure to not take over? And how do you allow for management not to get crippled? So as a team manager, in different perspectives, what would be your take on what should be that tolerance to fail, tolerance to deal with ambiguity? Should that even exist? Can you do without it? How do you make it work in your world?
So Rahul, one, that was a really big question, a complex question, and there were a lot of answers in your question, right? You spoke about a few things. One is tolerance to failure, right? Unless you fail, there is, no one really, when you come out of a mother's womb, you don't really, human child is one of the most helpless, vulnerable baby of the species, right? You acquire skills over a period of time. So if you know Professor Talvin Shahar, he says that when kids learn to walk, they fall, they get up, they walk, and then they fall, and we applaud them every time, they fall and they get up. We're so proud as parents. However, as you grow up, this becomes, this tolerance to failure goes down. In fact, you tend to get reprimanded, you tend to get, ridiculed for it, etc. And we get scared. Also, Rahul, one of the things, so this is the tolerance to failure. I think as a leader, there's a concept called leaders as containers. As a leader, one of your primary jobs is to act, to have your calm center, to be able to absorb, the pressure, the ambiguity, and to really translate it into simplicity, and as well as hold the stress. And so leaders as containers, for sure. Second, you need to role model. You need to role model and be vulnerable and say, you know what, I failed at this, but this is what I learned. I failed here, but this is what I learned. And if one of your team members fails, acknowledge. Talk about what went well there, the effort, the idea, right? Brainstorm and then move ahead. Acknowledge what went well. So tolerance to failure doesn't need to be a really high sounding term out in the sky. It's really very, very doable. As leaders, it's our primary responsibility. The second is, to be able to do this, you need psychological safety for your team to exist and say that, if I give out an idea, I won't be laughed at, I won't be ridiculed, or I won't be shamed, or I won't be, be condescended to. Things like this. So building psychological safety so that everyone brings, even if it's a silly idea, so-called silly idea, okay, if it's a foolish idea, or if it's an idea that doesn't give you immediate returns, the person needs to feel safe to be able to bring it. So psychological safety, trust, leaders as containers. And the last point that I want to mention, Rahul, is what we mentioned in our talk when we met up. Generally in our culture, the power distance between you and authority, whether it is parents, it's school, it's office, your bosses, your seniors, is really high, right? We tell our kids what to study, what subjects they'll take, which job, who you'll marry, when you'll have kids, and maybe even how many kids. You know what I mean? Like, I'm exaggerating, but this is how this is the society we live in. When you come, and when this child comes into an organization, you expect, okay, now you're going to innovate. The switch doesn't just happen. So as leaders, it's our job to make sure that we give them this crucible. We give them the opportunity to have these crucible experiences where you say, what, I can try here. Even if I fail, so what? I will go for another idea. I'll do this. I'll learn from here. So as leaders, I think to role model, to be okay with being vulnerable, to talk about your failures, to share them openly, to create this environment of trust, give them a space to experiment, be the containers to absorb this, to translate ambiguity into simplicity. I think this is what we can do as leaders, as managers, as at any level.
Superb. Sonal, I think you really you defined that and turned it then into a nice process of sorts, right? Leaders as containers, absorbing pressure, ambiguity, translating into simplicity, the kind of role model approach, the whole reflection approach, the whole psychological perspective that a manager needs to bring. I think all of that golden words and, really maps well to what really needed and what is really needed in the industry. Now, Ravi, I remember your book is one of my favorites. And one of the things that you mentioned early on in the book is this whole aspect of a Dare to Try award. And I remember in your book, you mentioned that there were 2 awards. There was a Dare to Try award, and then there was a, best kind of award, right? And the best award did not do well. And, the Dare to Try award was really that got appreciated. That was, there. So can you talk a little more about incentives, right? How do you carve out these awards, recognitions, whatever that means, not from a gimmicky perspective, but to really stress on values? How do you really come up with these, and what has worked in your world?
Yeah, it's again, I have to sort of make it short and brief. So, Dare to Try, let me first start with the Dare to Try since you mentioned about it. And actually, the Dare to Try award is nothing but implementation of what Sonal said just now. So we've implemented exactly what Sonal has suggested. So in some sense, we have created a process around freedom to fail in some sense. So any team who works on an innovation project in any of the Tata companies, and if they're able to show 4 exemplary attributes, they can sort of nominate themselves for the award. And these 4 exemplary things are that the intent should be exemplary, which means whatever they set out to do has to be exemplary.
I love that.
The second is that the effort has to be exemplary. When I'm saying effort, now I'm bringing in quietly, in a very subtle manner, I'm bringing the management also into the picture, which means not only the team, but the support that the management gives to the team has also to be exemplary. The third is that the time of the exit should be exemplary. It should neither be too late or not too hurried. Just because there is an award, as Sonal said, child should not fall unnecessarily just to get the appreciation of the mother. That's in some sense, just to use the Sonal's word. So it has to be very timely, and neither you should sort of carry the dead wood for maybe months and years, which is nothing but a resource. And the fourth is, once you say that it's a failure, the reactions of the management has to be exemplary. So 4 exemplary attributes. Once the company and the team feels that they are able to show 4 exemplary things, they can pitch themselves for this award or nominate themselves for the award. And these awards are absolutely at par with the other awards, which are given by the Tata leaders for being successful or not being successful. They are absolutely at par. So that's one. The second principle that we follow in our awards is we try and create a level playing field. So if I were to ask each of the panel members here to think about the innovations that they are most impressed with, most of you will talk about a product. Most of you. It could be an apple or something else. I don't know what's that. But by and large, it will be a product. In a few cases, it might be a service. A few cases, especially in the last few years because of financial services. It will rarely be an example where you will give an example of a supply chain or a human resource innovation or a branding innovation or a manufacturing innovation or a process innovation. So what we do is we have created a level playing field for every area that can happen, that exists inside the company, and those people vie for an award amongst themselves. So HR people fight among themselves for an HR innovation award. Supply chain people vie for an award called Supply Chain Innovation Award, and so on and so forth, including CSR and including energy and safety and stuff like that. So we have broken this down into multiple, because the reason is every Tata company it's like an Olympic. Every Tata company is playing a different game. Somebody's playing a badminton game, somebody's playing a football game, somebody's playing a hockey game. So what we do is We work on three areas. We work on areas which can create a desire amongst all employees to innovate or to differentiate, as I said earlier. The second is my work is to develop those creative muscles, the right brain, which normally people don't. As an engineer, we are not trained to use our right brain. So we do take some programs and initiatives which create the creative muscle of the people. And the third is the whole rigor of not only doing a PUC or a pilot, but actually scaling up, because innovation is all about scaling. So long answer, but I know maybe I'm not able to answer fully, but yeah, in the time that I had, I could answer.
Fantastic. No, that's very refreshing to hear. And really, those 4 points that you mentioned, will not forget them. You know, the exemplary attributes, you know, typically those are not well defined. And the whole intent, effort, you know, the exit time and reaction from management, all, if they are all exemplary, then yes, it is always exemplary. I think you've beautifully simplified it into something that can be leveraged everywhere. Not thinking about, you know, at an individual level. Right, we talked about a company level, we talked about a management, you know, team management level. Now think about as an individual. I'm a fresher, I am 2 years into experience and so on. Srini, you know, maybe start this question with you. What advice you would give someone who's, you know, at the early stage of the career, where the typical mindset is, look, I'm doing what I'm asked to do, and I'm really pouring in the hours. I'm very diligent. I'm really stretching the limits on making my OKRs, KPIs, KRAs, you know, call it what you, but all of these, I always nail them, right? There is no KPI that I've never met. And yet the feedback I get on my appraisal is, I'm not innovative. I'm not entrepreneurial. You know, so what should I do? So you've mentored so many folks within the company, outside the company. Could you give some thoughts on what would be your advice to someone starting off in their career with this mindset?
Rahul, I think thanks, but I'll just take some points on the last question on the failure to
Sure, please.
See, there are two perspectives, and I'll give you two the very different perspectives. My 2 years back, my daughter was in second standard, and she was giving the IMO Maths Olympiad exam, and she got 39 upon 40. She was an international silver medalist. But for some reason, we knew the question which she had answered wrongly, and it was the easiest question in the whole set. So it was the first question, and that was wrong. The rest of the 39 questions she was right. But for the next 2 years, we kept on saying you always miss the easier ones. And I think last year was when me and my wife dawned it to us that she had answered 39 good and she was an international silver medalist. Yet we are harping on the one answer that she made it wrong. So probably I think that is human tendency. What we try to actually correct it in our company, if you walk into our makers lab, which is our R&D center, we have one cycle which is kept in a stage, and it's enclosed. And that cycle we have written is our example of first successful failure. And that is what we show to every customer. So what happened is when we started our lab 7 years back, we had no idea as to what we need to do in our lab, what are the focus areas and all. So we said, let us create a bike that will stand on its own. And we actually got a bike from our house and we started putting sensors on it. We worked on it for a long time, but we were not successful on it. And at the same time, we came to know that Boston Dynamics actually come up with a solution on how a bike can stand on its own. So from that whole thing, we understood one thing is that when we work on technology, we should actually touch and feel technology. That's a focus area. And second, we actually hung it in our lab. And to every customer who comes, we show that this is our first successful failure from where we have learned what we are supposed to do and what we are not supposed to do. Now, coming back to your point is when a fresher joins into a company, and when I am one of the key guys who does the induction, we induct this as our first slide after our vision mission, which is to simplify lives using collaboration and all using technology. We say that this is the slide that you all should focus on. That there will be times when we will work on it and we'll fail, but we'll come out and say that yes, we have failed. We'll show it to our CEO also that yes, we have failed it. We have used your resources. We have failed, but we have learned something out of it. And this is what we'll show to our customers also. So the customers don't see all the good products and patents that we have created. The first thing they'll see is what we have failed. So when a fresher comes in, the point that we are trying to drive them is that yes, you have KPIs that you're supposed to do. If you're in a billable project, you're supposed to take care of your customer, generate revenue for your company. But beyond that, each individual has to grow. And that growth will happen only once you start thinking differently with the domain knowledge that you have gathered from the customer and from your own teammates. So it will happen slowly over a period of time. And as Sonal and others were alluding, if you start appreciating people for their ideas, that automatically will create a culture of it. Okay, KPIs say you can build it to some extent, but how the leader is and what is the mode of appreciation? It doesn't need, it need not be promotion and hike all the time, but how do you appreciate this idea and to what extent you try to make it reality is what makes the difference.
Brilliant, brilliant. No, brilliant advice. It's, I think, very, very well taken. We have a bunch of audience questions also, and we'll only let me close with two quick questions to the panelists, and then we'll also open up to audience questions. We'll take them. So one question, this is for you, Sonal. There are always biases in an organization, right? This person, cannot, I started with that bias saying, are people innovative or not innovative, right? DNA wise, right? To start with. Now there is, this is a woman versus this is a man. Does that, bring in some perspective or, some bias? Coming in from a socioeconomically upwardly mobile kind of schooling versus not, right? I remember in a, you always have expression, communication, sometimes half the battle won, because you can express yourself, you can communicate your ideas to the world, and then people notice you. But what if you don't have command over the English, right? You don't have that command and you're from a small town, you're barely learning the language. Should that come in your way? And I remember working at my startup where we actually hired from small town. We said interview will be in Hindi or Gujarati or Marathi and Kannada, right? There will never be an interview in English. And we're hiring engineers, right? We want smart people. We don't want Shakespeare. So how do you deal with that? Like, although it's easier to say this, but you have probably faced the other side of things. Probably you're the first woman in so many things. I remember seeing your resume where you have a list of first woman to do X or first woman to do Y in the army and otherwise. Can you share your perspective of how do you deal with that bias? Of course, organizations need to improve, but, what is your advice to people who are biased against, and how do you deal with it? How do you shine through the clutter?
Firstly, Rahul, thank you. I think it's a very, it's a very sensitive question. I really like it. A lot of people ask the usual work-life balance crazy questions, which I think are so outdated. Like, really, that's a question that should be banned for women panelists.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll tell you I'll give you a different perspective. I think one of the best things of being underestimated is that you can dazzle everyone when you perform well. So because everyone's the expectations are so low that when you perform well, you can blow their socks off. I think language communication is very important for sure, but communication is not a servant of a particular language. Communication really is the ability to get your thought across to the person who's receiving, right? And a lot of the crazy brilliant people I know, they suck at English. So English is not the prerogative of, but I do know biases exist, Rahul. Okay, there were times I was the only woman in about 15,000 men. So I can understand, where the underestimation comes from. My advice, if I can give, is be good at what you do. Be really good. If you're not, learn to get good at it. When you're good, it's very difficult to ignore you. So it doesn't matter whether you put your, whether you come from an elite English school, whether you come from, now there's another temple of godliness, right? IIT, IIMs, MS abroad, and things like that. It doesn't matter. Be good at what you do. Bring value through your ideas, right? And learn to communicate. It doesn't matter if you use broken English or you use broken Hindi or you use broken anything. The ability to communicate is important. And if you're able to do that through videos, we are in the best time in the universe. We have internet. Like, look at the privilege that's accorded to us. And, Corona did bring in a lot of good too. You have the ability to reach anyone across the globe, anywhere. You're not even, and you have you have Google Translate, you have everything. So to the underdog, I would say, be good at what you do. It doesn't matter what others think of you. What matters is what you think of yourself. Okay, keep at it.
Brilliant nuggets there, Sonal. Thank you so much. And that's truly empowering for everyone, inspiring to hear that perspective. Okay, let's close the questions with a quick poll. This is rapid fire. Just one question. This is always a burning question in anyone's mind in any team. Should I wait for permission for that thing, or should I just do it? And if it fails, say sorry. Right? Every engineer goes through this. Every operations expert goes through this, because there are ideas that you have, right, keep buzzing in your head, and you can quickly say, let me just do it and get done. And you'll know in 5 minutes, I'll tell you, it takes me half an hour to code that thing, rather than it takes me 2 meetings, 1 hour to prepare for presentation and then get somebody's yes or no. So, quick answers. Ravi, maybe, you go first. Just should we wait for permission, or just do it and say sorry? What's your philosophy?
So I cannot give one answer. Depends upon the industry, to be very honest. The coding, I would say just go ahead and do it and say sorry.
Okay.
But if it involves a large manufacturing setup and things can go wrong, I wouldn't just say that go ahead and do it and create a catastrophe. Sorry.
Okay.
Depends.
No, that's very mature perspective. Thank you. Great to hear that. Srini?
Go ahead and do it. So that since I'm from the innovation team, go ahead and do it. And wherever you're stuck, then you come and ask for permission. We'll help you out.
Okay. Oh, that's great. Sonal?
Risk over regret any day.
Okay. No, that's great. I think that's a very mature perspective, Ravi, bring in, where, there is life at stake. I remember back at National Instruments, we had these, when you're designing systems for space shuttles, there is a degree of, a failure that, every system is graded with. And, earlier at the bottom level, it is a loss of limb is one level. It's a machine where it can chop your hand. That's level one of a machine that's, a disaster. Level 2 is a life can be lost. One life can be lost. Level 3 is where a group of lives can be lost. Level 4 is when an entire city can be lost. And depending on what level of a project you're dealing with, there are certain protocols to be followed. And I think that's kind of the mindset that we have to bring in. No, thanks for that very mature perspective. And, broaden our, I think the way Sonal said it, Srini said it, if just look at the implications, as you said, and if that, I just go ahead and do it, nothing like trying it out. So it's amazing. It's quite an amazing journey over the last hour. All of these questions. Now, I think we have quick time to take some audience questions. Akshay, would you be guiding us through that, or should I pick from the audience questions? How would you suggest we do that?
Yeah, I think we can pick from the audience question, Rahul.
Okay.
Check out the.
Sure. So, one question comes from Abhijit, who asks a $1 million question, right? Everyone has this in mind, which is, how can a company balance their need for innovation versus current commitments? One is readiness for the future, while the other is for today's bread and butter. What kind of strategy should be employed to strike a balance to achieve both? Any perspective here? Ravi, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think not a very difficult one to me. The reason is we all. I love that story, which said that there's a jar and you put sand in it, and then you put small pebbles in it, and then you try to put large stones in it. And if you follow this process, there will be no space left for the large stones. So best thing to do is put some innovation projects in the jar, which is 3 or 4. Then you put small pebbles in it, which is improvements, small improvements, which are not very risky, but will give you those delta revenue and delta profit, and then fill it up with the whole sand, which is your day job. So I love that, and therefore, if the strategy can be created in the reverse manner, I think that's okay. And now the company has to decide how many big pieces they want to put in the jar and how big is the jar. That depends upon the resource, appetite, funds, and stuff like that.
Very cool. No, thanks for that, Ravi. Very nice. Then, there's another question coming from Samir, which is around how do you train creative muscle? And this is, things that, how do you actually, let me abstract that question a little bit, which is, while creativity is one aspect of it, but how do you create an upskilling program of sorts, right? We always think school, and maybe that's a very wrong kind of construct to think about or have a metaphor for that. But how do you upskill people on the job to actually be entrepreneurial, showcase innovation? Sonal, you want to take that? You've seen different scenarios in which upskilling would need to be done, in the middle of an operation, in the middle of things moving, bullets flying, and you're saying, oh, get entrepreneurial, get in the thing. How do you train someone to face that kind of scenario? And same thing in a corporate world. Any thoughts, Sonal?
So the abstract answer to that abstract first question is that they say that you train so much in peace so that you can just perform in war, right? One is that if innovation becomes your day-to-day, you don't innovate when you need it. You innovate when you don't need it, when you start thinking of it and you work on it. So constantly keep looking and encouraging for ideas. Encourage them. So there are two axes. One, you create an ecosystem that enables this thought, that encourages this mindset. Two is you work at the capability level of the individuals. And like you said, train in peace so that you don't bleed in war. We need to make sure we help our people to innovate. We give them the ecosystem, we give them the trust, we give them the psychological safety, we give them tools, processes, we train our leaders so that we can create this bubble of safety so that we don't bleed when we need it. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. There's another question from Sachin, and Srini, maybe you can help us enlighten us on this. Sachin asks, execution is the most underrated facet of innovation. Most ideas don't fail, but they fail to take off. How do you deal with that? What are your thoughts on ensuring that ideas don't take off? Because often we all have faced that, right? Where everyone has ideas, and there are two perspectives. So I'll break it into two questions. One is from a management perspective. What should be management's perspective to ensure that ideas actually take off? And from an employee perspective, often I've seen folks saying, I gave an idea, nothing happened, nobody did anything about it. It's almost an expectation that somebody needs to execute. Jao, Taj Mahal banao. I gave an idea of Taj Mahal, right? So that's another, extreme. So can you help enlighten us? How do you do it? What have you seen successful in trying to bridging or not having both these scenarios kind of happen?
Yeah, I think taking from where Sonal said, you need to create to create an ecosystem where the idea actually goes to a logical conclusion. So what generally happens, as you rightly said, in our company, about 4,000, 5,000 ideas are put into the ideation engine every year. And what we've done in our company, which I think after a lot of feedback we did, is that each idea is assigned to a mentor. And the mentor actually goes through the idea. The easiest thing he's supposed to do is rate them on certain parameters and push it to the next round. But the second side is where the ideas are not moved to the second round. You actually give a feedback saying more details required, you need to work on, or it's an already existing idea or some other unit is working on it, kind of a thing. So one is you tell them why your idea to an extent has not been shortlisted. And we come to those ideas which are shortlisted. What generally happens is at an org level, if I have say 10, 15 ideas that have been shortlisted from round one based on a technical ability that this is feasible, is that company has a limited budget on how much money it would like to invest on actually taking all those ideas full throttle. So there will be a business call that will be taken and those ideas will be taken. But the second thing that we do is for the remaining ideas, we try to see is that can we create a minimum MPV? Can we create a small solution within the business unit budget. So if I'm the business unit head, can I take some part of the budget, and the budget is primarily resources. Can I allocate 2 more resources, say for 15 days to get this POC done? And once that is done, you then take it to the business leaders and say, okay, we have reached a certain stage. Can this also be now put into those baskets? So I think there's a fine balance that we need to do. But the idea, when we do webinars on ideation, we also set the expectations right, that the idea will move to a logical conclusion only if it follows certain parameters, it is unique, it has a business value aligned to our line of business that we are focusing on, to the technologies that we are focusing on. But for other process improvement, automation ideas, we actually cuff it back to the unit head, saying that probably this could be taken to your customers as value addition. So each idea we try to see, it's not only those 10 ideas that go into entrepreneurship, it is those other 20 ideas that get developed into a POC, and some of them that go to the business heads. So that fine balance we have to do. But then the expectations are set that you cannot say that I have an idea and now you go ahead and do it.
No, great lesson in expectation setting. Thanks, Srini. We have just time for one last question. I know we're already over time, but I hope we'll take one more question. Parikshit has this question around, and maybe Ravi, if you can help us answer this. In a nutshell, Parikshit is really asking, is there a way, we can get that startup level of rigor, risk taking, and that kind of a mindset within an org, so that it really eliminates the need to acquire orgs? I remember when you had answered that question earlier, you said it's a combination of both. You want the outside garden, you want the inside garden, and you kind of develop both. What do you think? Is there a magical answer where you can say, if we did this, and maybe it's impossible, but you said, if we did this, a company would never need to acquire a startup. Any possibilities?
No, I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. But yeah, I mean, it's like saying that if you own the whole earth, then nobody else can, in some sense. So I think I would say I would not like to go with this idea at all. I mean, that's my personal view. That I think we'd like to be. That's why the open innovation subject is all about. So I think one has to be open. One has to do the best, and also be, and agree that there are smarter people outside as well. And acquisition is not the only way. There are other ways of growing together, living together, and stuff like that. So I'll stop here. But I'd like to just take a minute here.
Yeah,
and
please.
Give a very not confuse audience, but ask them to think about it. So when Sonal mentioned and you mentioned, how do we create more innovators? How do we allow more people to innovate? I think the best analogy to me is when I started playing lawn tennis, I was told that you hit the wall, do ball practice. When you see young kids playing basketball, they do baskets. When people want to sing, the best place they sing is bathroom, where nobody can listen. That's you start with. So the point that I'm making is, what is the equivalent of this that companies are? How are you allowing people to give ideas and nobody is watching? If you can crack this, I think that's the answer. The answer lies here. We don't do anything. Corporates do nothing where they ask people to ideate, but don't watch or don't evaluate them. If the moment you're asking them to give ideas, you will definitely evaluate them. And that's where that becomes a little bit of a friction comes in. So I will leave it, let more people.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I think that's very powerful. Everyone should, we should all think about that more. Sonal, any closing thoughts? Any thoughts for the audience that you would like to leave them thinking about?
Sorry, I was on mute. That's the sentence of the year. One is, don't get, like I said, just keep doing. I loved what Ravi just said in his closure. Really, I think it's so powerful. Don't get perturbed by by really high-sounding words. Don't get perturbed by who's asking. Don't get perturbed by hierarchy. I would say bring the play into home. Bring the play into your work. Bring the play into the way you do things. Look at children. They play, they do, they learn, they innovate without even giving it labels. So do it, get better, learn, get your power skills, and innovation will happen. Like really look for better things all the time. Don't get perturbed by what the world has to say. Just go ahead.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Srini, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think to all and to myself also that the world has changed from a typical being a solution goal of the world where the IT services used to give solutions. Now the world is expecting a lot of innovation from us. So the expectation from each one of us is that in the work that we do, can we make the differentiation? Can we do the value addition? And can we allow ideas to flow free within the company, like Ravi said? And do we take some of those ideas to the logical conclusion? Is where the world is all moving about. Yeah.
Superb. No, thank you so much, everyone. I think it's been a wonderful, very, very enlightening. I'll also leave everyone with one nugget, one often asked question about 20% time at Google. Along the same lines, like, is there that 20% time? And let me tell you, no. Yes, there was a 20% time, but no, 20% doesn't mean, oh, it's Friday, I'm thinking, I'm in my different zone, don't disturb me. You clearly have a large product working, you clearly have your day job. 20% is a mindset. 20% is a mindset. A license to think is really a license to keep your brain alive beyond what you're told to do. And I think that's the spirit of actually building entrepreneurship and having that license. And please know that every one of us has that within us. So it's really up to us. The onus is on us, as all of our very illustrious panelists have repeated so often in today's discussion. So thanks, everyone. I think Sonal, Srini, Ravi, truly a pleasure and solidly enlightening. I think this has truly been an enriching experience for me. Thank you. Over to you, Akshay.
Rahul, likewise, such a pleasure. And I think you were really brilliant with your questions.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks to all the panelists and thanks to all the audience. Yeah. Anjan has to share the closing notes. Anjan,
yeah, I'm just thinking, what a fascinating conversation. Want to keep continuing, but I know time is the villain. We can't do anything, and it can keep on continuing. And I feel a lot of people are stuck on. I can see the participant list. There are a lot of people who are there, hooked on for the last 1 hour and 15 minutes, and that's so good. But to share a few thoughts on this journey, I remember that when we started planning for this summit, we were not sure even what to name it. Our purpose was to trigger and encourage deeper conversations around innovation for each Amdocs employee. Then we realized that innovation should not be bounded. Even if it is just a conversation, innovation is true and meaningful when it is boundless. And we need to unbox it. And the name Unbox Summit came up in our minds, and we thought, why not have it as the summit, Unbox Summit. So, and also we wanted to open it up beyond Amdocs, because initially we thought it would be only for Amdocs employees, but then the innovation cannot be boxed within Amdocs only. So we look forward to contribute to unboxing it, even if it is a very small contribution. I know in this limitless universe of innovation opportunities. 3 keynotes from 3 different thought leaders. And today we concluded with an energetic discussion on all the areas brought together. And I would like to express my gratitude to Rahul. Obviously, he has been associated with us since last many years as an advisor for many innovation events. And then Mr. Ravi, Arora, and Mr. Shreenivas for accepting our request to join this panel discussion. They are part of our corporate innovation forum also, and we keep on connecting together and exploring the innovation space together. And then our very own and the inspiration for many within Amdocs, Ms. Sonal Sharda, means what to say about her. And I could see the messages coming in my personal WhatsApp also about Sonal being so scintillating. Right, Sonal, thanks for being there. And this diverse panel with 4 deep thinkers really justified our efforts for having this summit. All the best to all 4 of you. Keep motivating, inspiring, and sharing many more. And not just all these 4, but behind the scene, we have the IT team, ICOM, and social media teams who really worked hard to make this summit visible. And I want to thank them all. All our hosts and participants throughout the sessions who asked a lot of deep questions and enabled the audience to have meaningful takeaways. That is more important, the takeaways, right? And we have so many takeaways today in the culmination. And a big thank you to all of them who joined us online and want to carry forward this meaningful journey of innovation with us. Thank you to all of you. And thanks, Akshay, especially. You were there always.
Thanks so much for all the audience patiently listening. Thank you. We sign off the Unbox Summit. Looking forward to see you all in the next edition. Stay tuned, take care, and keep innovative.
Ravi,
Thank
Srini,
you, everyone.
Rahul, thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, everybody.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Rahul, very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Srini.
you,
Nice
Ravi.
meeting
Thank you,
Sonal.
Srini. Thanks, Sonal.
Thank you.
Thanks, Akshay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.